All right, guys, welcome back to the Pursuit of Progress podcast, where our mission is simple, helping you guys improve, grow, and just become your best version every single day. As always, I'm Adam here with my co-host Ben, and today we're actually going to be diving into one of our favorite topics, creating powerful habits through the principles outlined in James Clear's best-selling book, Atomic Habits.
That is right. Welcome back, everyone. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I've read it multiple times, and the reason it's so important is because if you've ever struggled to form good habits, or if you felt frustrated because you just can't stick with positive changes, this episode and this book is for you. James Clear shows us how tiny incremental changes, so small they almost seem insignificant, compound over time, creating massive, lasting transformations. By the end of today's episode, you'll know exactly how to form the habits that stick, break the bad habits, and create a life of continuous improvement, one tiny step at a time. Wow.
You said that about as clear as James Clear.
James Clear. That's right.
I haven't read
One of
this
my
book in
favorite
a
books,
while.
and I've read it multiple times. And this is one of those. And have you subscribed to his newsletter?
I don't know if I actually have. I don't think so.
He does a weekly newsletter. It's very brief. It's just, I think he does like a full length monthly newsletter, but he has a Thursday update where he shares 3 quotes, 2 thoughts, and one thing. A lot of just great information in that. And so if you haven't signed up for that, you can do that right on his website.
I'll have to check that out. So what are atomic habits, Ben?
Well, atomic habits, the term atomic habits comes from the idea that habits, just like atoms, are small yet incredibly powerful building blocks of our lives. James Clear emphasizes that tiny changes consistently repeated lead to profound outcomes. Habits compound over time, just like investing money. Small daily actions can eventually lead to extraordinary results. For instance, just reading 10 pages a day equals over 3,600 pages a year, and that's easily 10 to 12 books and enough to radically shift your knowledge and your mindset.
That's awesome. I love just the concept of compound, whether it's compounding interest, just this idea of just, things that at the time, doing it once, doing it twice, doing it a dozen times, you don't really see the growth or the progress, but then you compound that over a month, over a year, over a decade, and wow, that's something that I think is for a lot of people very hard just to kind of continue on for a long period of time without seeing the instant gratification, those results, right away.
And that's exactly why it is so important to have a vision for your life in every area, for your health, going to the gym, your running, your personal finance, your career. Because when you have a vision, number one, it's long term. It gives you focus. It's easier to say no to those things that don't align with your vision and values. And it allows you to stay focused on what is important. But number two, it's having that long term perspective. And in this age, in this digital age that we live in, the age of American consumerism, we're all brainwashed to think that whatever we want, we can have it right now. I mean, last night I ordered a picnic set for this summer to where we can go on picnics. It arrived this morning at 7 a.m. I ordered it last night at 7 p.m.
You don't even need that for like 2 months.
It's at my door 12 hours later. Well, but I'm planning though. I'm excited.
That's
I even
awesome.
got a charcuterie board as well.
Ooh, ooh, you got some plaid to put on that grass before you put that basket down, or what?
Yeah. It came with a blanket too. It was like
Ooh.
$50, 4 plates, 4 wine glasses, silverware, charcuterie, blanket, and a backpack to keep things cool. So yeah, very, very excited.
And a happy girlfriend.
And a happy kid. It's just going to be fun to go down to Washington Park or maybe up to Vail and do some fun picnics.
Yeah, that's cool.
We'll have to get the dogs together and the girlfriends and go on a picnic this summer.
I think we leave the dogs at home, but other than that, yeah, I like that idea.
Okay. And for those of you that don't know, our producer is Adam's dog, Charlie. We've brought him up in some other episodes. You've probably even seen him in the background. Don't tell Charlie.
I'm gonna have to have him as a guest. I'm just having a hard time keeping the headphones on him, but hopefully soon we'll get it figured out. So let's talk about like why atomic habits are so powerful. So we've been talking a little bit about this already, but atomic habits, they work because they remove this overwhelming sense of, I don't know, just frustration for a lot of people. And it just really forces you to focus on consistency. Everybody wants these big results, but big goals often fail because they're just intimidating for a lot of people. And these small habits, they feel easy, they feel doable, they feel satisfying. And because they're achievable, you're a lot more likely to just stay consistent and build that momentum. It's not about the drastic change overnight, it's about those small intentional shifts that over time become second nature.
I've heard you share this on the podcast before, and it's that saying that essentially references that most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year, and they underestimate what they can do over the course of 5 or 10 years. And that is exactly what this is all about, especially starting new habits or getting back into the rhythm of a certain habit. I always use the gym. All of us want to be in better shape, and when you're out of shape, the most difficult thing to is just go to the gym because it's so hard. And if you haven't done it, or if you've gained some weight, maybe you've just lost the habit of working out. Getting in shape is so difficult, isn't it? When you're out of shape, or me running. I just really got serious about my running again this year. And because I hadn't been extremely intentional about my running, really getting in shape, when you're out of shape doing something, it's not fun. It's painful. It hurts. It's not enjoyable. And so what I will normally do, for example, when I started going to the gym again, this is before you and I started lifting together, but after my divorce in 2018, I hadn't built out that habit yet of going to the gym. So all of this, the reason that most people fail when they go back to the gym is because they're mixing consistency and intensity together. And when you
Mhm.
do both of those at the same time, a lot of times it's just too overwhelming. So what I learned with the help of this book is focus on the consistency first. So just get to the gym every day. And there were days where I would just drive to the gym, I would walk in, and I would just stretch for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and then leave. I was less concerned about what I was doing when I got there and more concerned about building out the habit and the pattern of going to the gym. And so I would maybe stretch for a week. And then the next week, week two, I'd stretch and then I would do one exercise. And then the following week, I'd do two exercises. And then I would slowly build out the intensity after I had built out the consistency. Let me share one more example really quick. My daughter has gotten into, and I've shared this before, I've referenced her, but she's, got into competitive running in high school. And she had a tremendous cross country season. She was fourth in the league. She was first team all conference as a freshman. So she's competing against other girls that are much older than her. She's on the varsity team, and, we're in Jefferson County. So there's a lot of really big schools and a lot of other big teams in our division. But the reason she was able to have success is because in eighth grade, she wanted to start running. So we just had her run a mile a day, and we just did that for a year. Not challenging, not overwhelming, but she built out the habit of getting out and running every single day, whether she wanted to or not, regardless of what the conditions were, and just building out that consistency. After she did that, we then increased the intensity. And because she had that solid foundation and the consistency already built out, when she added on the intensity, it wasn't that big of a deal. Where other kids who didn't have that, it was completely overwhelming to them.
Burnout. That just has
Yeah.
burnout written all over it.
Yeah, if you've never run 6 miles and all of a sudden you're trying to run 6 miles, it is so overwhelming. This is always kind of like my joke to her, like the easiest way to make 6 miles feel like not a big deal, and this is true by the way, the biggest way to make running 6 miles not a big deal is start by running 8 miles. Start running 8 miles every day, and then 6 miles will not feel like a big deal.
Yeah, I like that. I'm gonna start at forward. I'm gonna start with half a mile to make the quarter mile not seem as bad. I need to running is a good one for that.
Yeah, just get out the door, and you don't even have to run. Just go for a walk initially and then do like a walk jog, maybe put the vest on and slowly build it out. Even if it takes months to actually go for a consecutive run where you're not jogging, like, just walk every day for 3 weeks and then do a walk jog. and then do a jog, walk, jog, and then do a jog, and then take a little break, and then do a jog, and then transition into a sustained run.
Walk, jog, walk. I like those terms.
Are
Well,
you
let's talk.
walk jogging or are you jog walking?
I'm a chumbawamba.
That's
So let's
right.
talk about some key strategies and some actionable steps here when it comes to these atomic habits. So I'll start by just talking a little bit more about kind of weird. I've been just kind of going down a little bit already on this, but just the 2 minute rule is what I like to refer it as. And I know you're using like a 5 or 10 minute at the gym, but basically just starting any new habit by doing it just for 2 minutes a day. And another great one outside of physical fitness is also reading. And a good one for this is just to start off. I know a lot of people that are, we're both in our 40s, and a few years ago is when I kind of picked reading back up, and I went probably, a solid decade without really probably finishing a single book. I mean, it was pretty bad. I'll be honest with you guys. And I
Your
can't
ears
remember.
to our listeners.
Say again.
I was just telling our listeners to cover their ears because you were making a confession there. But I'm the same way. I mean, I had never really read at all until probably
Mhm.
5 years ago.
I don't want to butcher the statistic. There's some crazy stat. It's like 90% of people never read a complete book start to finish
Yeah,
after high school. Like, it's something nuts.
and
But
I was
anyways,
in that category up until about 15 years after high school. I was
yeah.
part of that statistic. And it's
So
it's
with
a
reading,
mindset shift. I was so excited to never have to read again or study or do any type of homework because I had put this negative perception and this negative connotation on studying, not realizing how critically important and essential it is for self-development. And once I realized that, and then learning to study and learn the way we all learn in different ways, and so learning to learn how me personally like to learn, like learning how I learn, it was a game changer because we're all taught to learn a certain way. Our standard education system teaches us to, this is how you learn, and this is the things that you have to do in your homework. I hated that.
for reading, I was just going to say I do a 10 page. I started off just doing 10 pages a day. It's just very simple. It's just it's almost more than anything. It's just a mindset thing, because what ends up happening 90% of the time is you end up reading a little bit more than 10 pages. I think by having at least that kind of number in your head, if nothing else, it just kind of gets you to, when you get to 7, 8, 9 pages, you're hopefully at that point kind of getting a little bit more immersed into whatever the content is you're reading. And then you probably end up reading for another 10, 15 pages, or maybe you're getting the groove and you're sitting down for an hour reading. But that 2 minute rule, I think, is really important.
Yeah, and it's so rewarding once you do get into that groove where, you know, on the weekends I'll sit down and read 40 or 50 pages at a time. My girlfriend Grace, I mean, she had a goal to read 4 books a month this year. And it might even, it was like a book a week, and through middle of March she's read like 20 books so far. And I'm excited because I'm on book 3 and she's on like book 20.
Yeah, I read like 15 books last month. They're boxcar children. They're all about 80 pages, but
I've heard you reference that before, the Boxcar
I
Children
love
stuff.
that was my favorite book as a kid. Kind of
Yeah.
girly. I don't know why I'm letting everybody know that, but all right, let's talk about number 2, habit stacking. Ben, I'll let you take the lead on this one.
So habit stacking. So habit stacking is when you pair a new habit with an existing habit. Your current habits can serve as triggers for the new ones. So as an example, after you brush your teeth in the morning, which would be an existing habit, you immediately meditate for 2 minutes, which is a new habit. One thing that I started doing is right after we get home from the gym, which was an existing habit for me, I would then transition and go right into my daily devotional where I read my devotional. I pray for 5 minutes and then I do my daily reading. Before I was doing some of that stuff, but it wasn't as consistent. It was a little more sporadic. And now I've used that habit stacking method to do that on a daily basis as soon as I get home from the gym. So as soon as I get home, I'm transitioning right into those other things.
And those habits don't necessarily have to align with one another. It could be maybe and I know it sounds dumb saying a habit is brushing your teeth or taking a shower, but I think over
Please,
time, like a shower
please.
is a good example for me, where it's just over time, like I start to just kind of like think through my day in the morning when I'm in my shower and in the shower and almost like kind of using that as a time to like kind of plan out the day or kind of set some goals for maybe the day or for the week. And it's now at the point where it just, I think subliminally, when the water hits my head and the shower's on, I just kind of automatically at this point now kind of go there. And it's kind of a habit that no longer needs to be, structured in my head to remember to do it.
So that's kind of your creativity time in the shower?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, that's cool. James Clear talks about that. He's referenced that often, how we are so distracted as a society, notifications, social media, all these things. And the reason that shower time is so important is because it's one of the few times in our day where you are truly unplugged, you know? And so like it's a great time to be creative.
Hmm. Never thought about that before, but yeah, you're right. So let's talk about another one, environmental design, kind of, going on with the same idea with this, the shower being an example of an environment, but just making these good habits really easy by shaping the environment that supports them. you know, One way I like to do this is just preparing the night before with, so we both, Ben and I both go to the gym pretty early in the morning. It's no matter what time of year, it's usually very dark by the time we're getting up and heading out the door to go to the gym. So I put out my clothes that I'm wearing that, to the gym that day. I've got my pre-workout already kind of on the kitchen counter ready to go. Just some of these little things like that can really help, just again by creating that environment around you. Another one is too is just Ben's talking about just the distractions. If you're in a work environment where you really want to be productive for an hour, it's something as simple as just taking your phone and either just putting it on do not disturb, or ideally just putting it in a different part of the house, outside of the room, just having that environment, forcing yourself to not have as many distractions. I know, Ben, you've talked about you no longer even keep your phone in the same room as you when you go to sleep at night. That's another great example of this, where you're creating an environment to hopefully put you at higher chances of succeeding with whatever it is you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and the reason I did that is the more studies I've read up on about sleep hygiene and just getting a quality night's rest. Sleep is so important to long-term health, to refreshing your brain. You have to be able to get that REM sleep, and you really, all of us really do need 8 hours. But when you, the data shows us that when your phone is within 10 feet of where you sleep, people just do not sleep as well because that phone is there and it's a temptation to even go check in the middle of the night just out of habit. I mean, have you ever done that where it's like, you get up at 3 a.m. for whatever reason, your phone's right there, and all of a sudden you're scrolling at 3 a.m.? Like, how terrible
Yep.
is that?
Yep.
And I don't want my kids to fall in that, and I want to get out of that. So a couple months ago, we bought a docking station for all of our phones. So now we have a family docking station, and everyone has to turn their phone in at 9:30 p.m. The docking station is in a room that's separate from all of our bedrooms. And so we all then go dock our phones at 9:30. There's a charger for everyone's phone. We all have different types of phones. There's a appropriate adapter for each phone, and our phones sit there on the docking station, charge overnight. And then like you were saying, when I get up in the morning, my phone's ready to go. Now the next step for me is to not even take it off the docking station until I get back from the gym, and then I'm done with my daily reading and doing those other things that are important because I want to be less plugged in. The less plugged in I am, the better.
I know you've read this book a couple times, so you know this last one a little bit better than I do. But I know James Clear talks a little bit about this thing called the habit loop. Talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that. I think that's pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, so the habit loop is cue, craving, response, reward. So understanding, this is really important to understanding James's habit loop to create or break certain habits. So the cue is the trigger for behavior. The craving is the motivation behind the behavior. The response is the behavior itself. And then the reward is the benefit reinforcing the behavior. So to kind of give you an example, to build a daily habit of journaling, your cue, set your journal visibly on your desk. So keep your journal. You want to start journaling daily, keep your journal right on your desk. That is your cue. Your craving, anticipate the calm feeling after the journaling. So Envision how calm you feel after you've done the journaling and let that be your craving. Your response, spend 2 minutes journaling. And this is another thing that we have to address when it comes to the new habits. And you did touch on this earlier, but a lot of times these habits, starting a new habit can be so overwhelming. If someone wants to start journaling, they think they have to go write 10 pages in their journal. You don't. You don't have to do that. I started a gratitude journal recently, this year in 2025. And literally, I write down 4 things that I'm grateful for each day. And the 4 things are usually on one line and they consist of 4 or 5 words. And that's all that it is. But now that I'm doing that every single day, it probably takes less than a minute to write those 4 things down. That's now how I start my day off, is by writing down things I'm thankful for. I feel like my world has changed. I feel so, I have teenagers, so I have problems, I have challenges. This work environment that we're going through, it's been challenging. That's just the reality. So the challenges are real, but the fact that I've been focusing on gratitude and writing those things down, I feel so blessed. I mean, I feel the most blessed I've ever felt my entire life, even though I probably have more problems and challenges than I've ever had. So don't overwhelm yourself with the response. A lot of times it can be very brief, especially when you're building out the new habit. And then let your reward be enjoying that moment of clarity or peace. Allow that to reinforce your behavior. So every day when I write down those things, I just take a minute to reflect on what the things that I'm thankful for. Can I share a quick story for you? So the first night I got into Kansas City a couple of weeks ago and I was out there, I wrote down in my gratitude journal that I was thankful that I didn't get shot the night before. And I was being like 100% legit. Now let me tell you why. I drove to Kansas City. It's about a 555-mile commute, probably closer to 600. So it's about 600. My brother and I, we got an Airbnb in downtown Kansas City, so an urban area. And in most urban areas, they're just not as safe as suburbs. It's just the reality. And, Denver's that way. Most big cities are that way. So I knew that. I knew that it wasn't going to be as safe, but I didn't mind. Neither one of us did, because the place that we were staying was within walking distance of the sports arena. And so I'm pulling up to the Airbnb. I have the address plugged in and pull up to the Airbnb. GPS says you've arrived. You've arrived at your destination. I look at the house. It matches what's on the listing. I can see that the host left the light on for me. I can see right from the street the keypad on the entry. I can see the Ring cameras that the host referenced in the welcoming message. And so I pull right into the driveway, get out of the car, enter the keypad, enter the access code of the keypad. It doesn't work. I then contact the host and she says it's the last four of the person that made the reservation. So in this case, that would be my brother's wife. So I enter her phone number. That doesn't work. I then call her right on the porch there. And she says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot to tell you this, but we have the account registered under Jordan's phone number, not mine. Even though it's my account, it's still Jordan's phone number." So I then enter Jordan's phone number to try and get into this Airbnb. That doesn't work. And so I try it again. It's still not working. And then this, like, I've entered the code wrong so many times that this thing is like now buzzing at me and it's like going off. And so I then walk around the side of the house and there's another Ring camera. A light comes on. I'm like making calls. And keep in mind, this is at 11 p.m. at night. There's not another person up. It's at 11 p.m. at night. And this would be the equivalent of a house like in like right off Colfax in Denver, like some, like, kind of like, let that be your visual. And so I'm like banging on the door, trying to open the door, banging on I've entered the key. I'm making a lot of noise. I'm making phone calls from the porch. Dude, I'm at the wrong damn house. Someone lives there. I am at the wrong house. And so after I was like, "Where's the house number?" She's like, "It's on the mailbox to the left of the door." And I looked to the left, there's no mailbox. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm at the wrong effing house."
Did you tell her that?
Yeah, I mean, I was like, you know what? I think I'm at the wrong house. And then I kind of panicked, dude, because I was like, dude, there's someone here. Like, there's someone inside sleeping, and I'm like trying to get in. And like, what are they thinking? They
Yeah.
think, they're thinking I'm some crazy strung out person, like trying to break into their house. And so when I wrote that down the next morning, I'm so glad I didn't get shot the night before. Like, I truly meant that.
I'm glad you didn't too, man. That's pretty bad, buddy. That's a
Isn't
good
that
story.
terrible?
That's funny. Well, let's go ahead and move on to our sponsor of the week. So this episode is brought to you by Roadrunner Property Care in Tucson, Arizona. Your property, their priority. If you're a Tucson property owner looking to make life easier, Roadrunner handles it all. Maintenance, security, guest management, you name it. Visit roadrunnerpropertycare.com to get started today. Again, that's Roadrunner Property Care.
Love our sponsor.
That is just sorry, guys. That was I think that might have been a couple of his recent guests at Roadrunner Property Care. That was amazing. Anyways, thank you so much to all of our sponsors, but especially Roadrunner Property Care. All
Thank you
right,
so
guys. So
much.
let's
And
move.
Adam sells Denver. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So let's move on to just some real life application. Just kind of quickly share. Each of us will share a quick little kind of personal experience. So for me, just applying this 2 minute rule. So we talked about just starting with a small but consistent habit. This is something that I long time ago, but you know, hard to just beat push-ups, as far as just a functional exercise that, really works your body pretty well from, your core, your arms, your chest, it does a pretty good job, well-rounded exercise. Maybe it was probably 15 years ago at this point, but I didn't have a gym membership at the time. And I just bought a pair of the perfect push-up. You remember those things where you kind of like hold on to these little like handheld things on the floor and it kind of like rotates when you do the push-up. So I bought a pair of those and, just started off with just doing it for 2 minutes a day. Or I think I actually had a number of push-ups that I had, start off at 20. And with push-ups, the reason I wanted to bring this one up is it is amazing how quickly you improve or you increase. 20 push-ups the first day seems very challenging. All of a sudden, by 1 week into it, you're able to double that. It's amazing how, again, not being intense, the intensity is not a priority at this point. It's just the consistency. Once you have that consistency established over a period of time, then you can start trickling in the intensity occasionally and kind of have best of both worlds. But just that example of, starting off just doing 2 minutes a day, maybe after a week, you bump it up to 4 minutes, just having this progression over time and just really seeing how much improvement you can make on that and just how effortlessly it becomes once you really do get into that routine.
It's the human body is so remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah. Push-ups and pull-ups, I think, are two that are just like amazing. Like pull-ups, even more so. People can do one pull-up literally and keep doing it on a daily basis. After a week, you can do like 10.
Yeah, just start with one. Do one for 2 days, and then do two, and then do three. And you get it's just the human body, the ability to if you're consistent when it comes to exercise, and this is probably true for anything, when you are consistent, you can achieve remarkable results in a very short period of time with consistency. And even if you are someone who is out of shape, overweight, maybe you've never even worked out before in your life, if you get consistent and you build that out, you can get in the best shape of your life very quick. And it's so motivating and encouraging to see the results. Can't do one push up on day one. By day 10, you're doing 10.
Let
I,
me
I, I take it one step further. And what I love to do, I use habit trackers to just kind of track my progress. So when I run with a watch that is it's a Garmin watch, so it's specific to fitness and running. It tracks all of my stats, so my heart rate, my max VO2, the amount of steps that I've taken. It also tracks my mileage, my pace per mile, and then it downloads all of that data to my Garmin app. So it's kind of like this running journal, and it also keeps track of your streak too, how many days you've run in a row. And so knowing that I have this long streak, it's motivating because I don't want to break that streak. I also do the same thing with going to the gym and those other handful of priorities that I have every day that are important that we talked about last week. Working out, my daily devotional, my reading, all of those things I keep track of every day. And it's part of my daily journal that I bought, the gratitude journal that I was describing earlier. There's also a habit tracker in there. So Learning to take it one step further and track the data and just develop the trends. This is something that James Clear has said too in his book, Atomic Habits, that we get so focused on results and where we're at right now and the results that we want to achieve right now. But what he says in this book is that trajectory is by far way more important than actual results. You could have someone that is achieving more results or better results, but if your trajectory is going up, like that is what's most important. What trajectory are you on? And you develop that with your habits, with your consistency, and then learning how to build out the intensity from there.
Yeah, we've had a lot of our episodes bring up the concept of KPIs or key performance indicators, measurables. It is so difficult to really track this kind of stuff if you guys don't have some way to have a measurement tied to whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. So again, like with push-ups, whether it be a number of push-ups or amount of time that you're spending doing the push-ups, with work-related tasks, get through a certain portion of the project. I don't know, just whatever it is, just try and think of a measurable, because if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. And it's, just looking at yourself in the mirror every day is a good example. You're not going to see any difference today from tomorrow. But if you instead you're maybe, looking at the scale on your weight or something else that's measurable, then you can actually start to see that progress. And that's what's going to keep you going. That's what's going to help with the motivation side of this.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about some of the common pitfalls and how to avoid them. So, what are some of the common pitfalls? Well, being too ambitious early on. You really do want to start small. If you try and take on the world from day one, you're going to fail because you're not ready to do that. You have to build out the habits. You have to learn how to become that person that can take on the world. So start small. Don't attempt big leaps right away because this often leads to quitting and to burnout. When you go to the gym and you're out of shape and you work out for 2 hours after not having worked out for 2 years, dude, you're going to be so sore. You're not even going to be able to walk the next day. You're going to be so discouraged, and the reinforcement is going to leave, and the taste in your mouth is going to be terrible. You're not going to want to go back to the gym. So that's why you start small. Don't start too big. Inconsistency. One of the most important things is being consistent. So you want to aim for consistency over intensity. What I was talking about earlier with my example, just going to the gym, just get in the habit of driving into the gym, checking in, walking through the doors, and then going to stretch for 5 or 10 minutes. That was me building out the consistency. A tiny habit done daily is more powerful than a big effort done sporadically. Remember that. Ignoring your environment. Change your environment to align with your desired habits. Make good habits obvious and bad habits harder to do. You want to start eating healthier? Get rid of the junk food. You want to stop drinking alcohol? Get rid of the alcohol. You have to change your environment. You want to develop healthier relationships? Step up and improve your friend group. Change your environment.
Of that. Yeah, I think that's a really, really big one. And it's hard to do. All right, guys, so let's just kind of recap everything we talked about today. So we've explored James Clear's powerful concept of atomic habits and how these tiny shifts can really produce significant changes over time. So again, remember, start these habits small. That 2-minute rule is a good one to kind of keep in mind. Stack these habits on top of existing ones, and just make sure, again, you design your environment for success. Ben, I think you can kind of close us out on this one too, but what's like a good challenge maybe for our audience for the week?
Yeah, we challenged the audience last week, and let's challenge them again this week. So for this week, pick one habit you've been struggling with. And what I always say is, we all have that one habit that we're trying to quit, that one habit that we know we shouldn't be doing. Could be alcohol, could be a marijuana gummy, could be ignoring change, not doing the priorities, not doing the things that are important. Figure out what that habit is for you and apply the 2-minute rule. Apply the 2-minute rule, habit stack, or change your environment and commit to doing it daily for 1 week. So this is a 1-week challenge, and see what the results were. Notice what the momentum is, the momentum that you develop, and see the change that follows.
All right, guys. Well, if today's episode inspired you, please share again with somebody that could maybe benefit from this. Subscribe to our podcast, share the show, and just leave us a review, guys. It really does help. And as always, just keep pushing forward, pursuing your own progress, whatever that might be. And we're always here to grow together. So let's try and build up a community here, you guys. Leave a comment on the show, reach out to either of us with a direct message. We'd love just to engage with you and just learn a little bit more about maybe what value you're getting from some of these episodes. If you have any ideas for future episodes or potentially want to be a guest in season 2, we'd love the opportunity to connect with you guys. So please do so. And for Ben Adams, my name is Adam Lang, and we are closing this one out. Have a positive and productive week ahead. This is the Pursuit of Progress podcast. We'll see you guys.
Love you guys.